in the different breakout sessions. So who would like to give us an insight on what they discussed in the breakout session? Any hands? Can we get a microphone for her? Yes.
Oh, okay.
So start with your name, your nationality, and then you can go on.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Nema, and I'm from Rwanda. So a bit about what we discussed in the breakout rooms. I was in the Kadisimbi room. It was technology and unemployment. So a bit about my group. We're talking about bringing up a hub for entrepreneurs where all the funds could be allocated, finding technology for upcoming entrepreneurs who don't have access to technology and technical facilities. And also it's like bringing together an ideation of all the skills across Commonwealth countries. So it was a really interesting discussion, people talking about health and agriculture. So I think it's really gonna make a big impact. Thank you.
Yes, that's the spirit. I'm really glad you remember what you discussed even after eating. Props to you. Up next, who wants to share what they discussed in the breakout rooms? Don't be shy. Any hands? Yes, you at the back.
Is this open? Hello, this is May Nabila Abbas from Pakistan. So we have been discussing a topic regarding mental health among young people especially. So we have a problem statement like the mental health is stigmatized because not the young people are ready to talk about this openly. For example, when our body is aching or have fever, we instantly go to the doctor. But when it comes to the mental health, we are not ready to talk about this. So we have been discussing about the causes, that what causes mental health being affecting us. So like, we have been discussing about the cultural stigma, the religious stigma, and the other societal pressures which stop us to talk about the mental health. So we have the recommendation like there could be national policies and there could be the community work among different regions to promote mental health even in schools, colleges, and in universities. So this is how we would conquer this issue. And the first and foremost thing is to let's talk about mental health. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mental health is very important, breaking the bias and pinpointing where the problem is. There is not a lot of awareness on the issue of mental health. We still treat it as if it's something that the Westerners are the only people that go through. But it's very important for us to learn more about mental health, understand the cause, the situation, and find different ways in which we can be able to tackle all the problems. So thank you very much for sharing your insights. Two more people before we kickstart the next plenary session. Who wants to share what they discussed in their breakout rooms? Can we have the males? You want to go? That's okay. Remember your name, your nationality, so we can all get to know each other.
Okay, good day everyone. My name is Fatima Aliyu from Nigeria. I'm in the Sustainability, Climate Change and Blue Economies Action Lab. So for my group, we chose to work on plastic pollution. So we identified the problem statements, we explored statistics, we explored possible solutions and things like that. So we are making plans to make a pitch after the session. Thank you.
There you go. I'm so glad it's not ending with the discussions. You're making plans to continue to discuss and to take action at the different things that you discussed. Very, very important. Who is next? Someone there at the back, the gentleman.
Fantastic. And Martina, while we wait for that person to go, after he goes, we will then enter right away into our next plenary.
Definitely. Yes.
Thank you and hello. My name is Kule from South Africa. I met some amazing young people with brilliant ideas, and the most amazing opportunity about coming here is that not only do we get to do the work inside the auditorium or in breakaways, but even something as simple as lunch is an opportunity for us to come with solutions for our continent. So it's been amazing. In my group, we're talking about machines taking over or replacing human labor and the solutions thereof. So we think that young people should consider virtual work. I mean, Uber, Netflix, Amazon, you don't have to be in America to work for those. So we need to be creative in the continent and spread opportunities and work in Commonwealth countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone who pitched in, who was able to give us an insight on what we discussed. And I like something that gentleman said. It doesn't matter where you are in the auditorium, going out to take a break, having some lunchtime, any moment, anywhere, you can be able to interact, share ideas, share stories, which is very important. And that is why we're here, to share a common goal and to share our stories. So without further ado, let us quickly jump into the fourth plenary session. And I would like to call upon our moderator for this session. The session is going to be about co-creation and partnerships, and Vashti Maharaj, who is the Commonwealth Secretariat, is going to be leading us through this session. You're welcome.
No. Sorry, Martina. Let me just join you on top here very quickly.
All right, so there's been a change of plans. The person who's going to be taking us through this session is Olivia Ngo, Impact Santé Afrique. You're welcome.
How is everyone? I'm sure you cannot see me here, right? How is everyone doing? Great. We are the Youth Forum, right? So I'm hoping that we're going to have a fun session because we are youth, we are engaged, we have energy. So I'm hoping that we're going to feel all of your energy. Can I see your clap, please? Okay, so my name is Olivia Ngo. I'm the executive director of an NGO called Impact Santé Afrique, and we focus on the fight against malaria. But then we realized that we cannot eliminate malaria alone. So I'm also part of a global partnership called the Rollback Malaria Partnership to End Malaria. And it's a strategic partnership because we need all different sectors if you want to end this disease. We need people from the private sector, education, we need the youth, and we also need the civil society. And I'm also part of a global network of civil society for malaria elimination. So I'm telling you about all those partnerships because we are going to talk about the importance of strategic partnership. And we're also going to talk about co-creation and what does this mean. So I'm happy to, before we start, to welcome and to call the Honorable Minister of Youth, Sport and Culture of Eswatini, Honorable Aris Mulenga. Thank you, Your Excellency, for being here. And we're going to hear a key message from His Excellency, and then we'll start our panel. Thank you.
Oh, she needs this because of some vertical challenges. Thank you, Program Director. As introduced, I am Minister Harris Bulunga, Minister for Sports, Culture and Youth Affairs from the Kingdom of Eswatini, right in the south of the continent. Representatives of governments, young people, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my honor to deliver this keynote address on this auspicious occasion of the 12th Commonwealth Youth Forum as we discussed the theme, co-creation and partnerships. I'm deeply honored to address this strong gathering this afternoon, made up of over 200 young leaders in various fields and stakeholders, all sharing the same goal of driving the youth development agenda in the Commonwealth. In particular, I am pleased to engage and meet with so many bright young minds, doing amazing things in various spaces across the Commonwealth. Without doubt, the Commonwealth is home to the most brilliant young minds in the world. It is pleasing to gather in such fashion to discuss an apt theme, co-creation and partnerships. Such a theme couldn't have come at a more appropriate time than this, as the Commonwealth and indeed the entire world recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic while also dealing with the ever-dynamic challenges threatening to change the life that we know. It has become clear that for the Commonwealth to successfully navigate these past challenges, we need to work together in reinforcing our institutional capacity to weather all the storms and remain growing. At the center of this drive, we need our young people, all 1.2 billion of you from all over the Commonwealth. We need you, the youth, to stand up and be actively involved in building the Commonwealth that we want, and a Commonwealth that speaks to your needs, desires, and aspirations as young people. There is much we can achieve when and if we work together in harmony, hence the theme, co-creation and partnerships. The key word here is collaboration, and we all know that collaboration breeds ownership of ideas and strategies. It builds trust and enhances understanding of the decision-making process. That is why such a platform as this that we are here at is hugely important, because it brings the idea of co-creation and partnership to life already. Indeed, it is a strong partnership which we hope it will lead a lot of ideas that can then be taken to the Heads of Government Summit later on in the week. As they say, collaboration means there are more ideas which are more refined, there are better strategies, and of course, it means that when we pull our resources together, then we can even do more. And while we as young people carry with us unmatched youthful vigor, innovation and energy, we should also be humble enough to open ourselves to working with one another and with other groups. These groups may bring to the table invaluable experience and insights, all of which will help us to understand better the challenges that are facing our world, while further assisting us to formulate stronger ways to overcome them. It is paramount, therefore, that while we aim for our voices to be heard as young people, we also open ourselves up to working with other people and others in society, in particular the disadvantaged group. We should, as young people, lead in ensuring that our voices are heard, and this spirit of inclusivity, collaboration, and partnership will create a potent, unstoppable mix that will surely accelerate and sustain the growth of our nations and the entire Commonwealth. I'm excited to now join you in the plenary discussion that will follow, and I hope we will all apply ourselves and enjoy ourselves. I look forward to learning from you all this afternoon. God bless you and thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. So before I call our amazing panelists to the floor, I wanted to know from you, the audience, what do you want to know about strategic partnership? And what does co-creation mean? We just heard the minister saying that when we collaborate, we can have more ideas, better ideas, more strategies, and we can even have more resources. So the minister just said that collaboration is key. So what do you want to hear today? What do you want to know about partnership or co-creation? And we have our young sister on here with the mic. And can I have a volunteer to tell us what you want to hear today about partnership and collaboration? Or what you want to know? Come on, guys. Nothing? Okay. So can anyone tell us what challenges you face when you want to collaborate? Or when you've tried to build partnership? Thank you. Can we clap for her?
Good afternoon. My name is Victoria. I'm from Cameroon.
Yeah, I'm from Cameroon too.
Thank you. So, one challenge I face when wanting to partner, I think it's alignment of visions and the creating of common goals, like when it comes to coming to an agreement on what we want to achieve for the things we want to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's my sister from Cameroon. So alignment of vision is key, and we're going to talk about it with our panelists, how to make sure we have a shared vision, because if you don't have a shared vision, it can be very difficult to collaborate. So I'm very pleased to introduce you to this session that's going to talk about co-creation and strategic partnership, because we realize that it's really important when we want to deliver bold solutions to the world's greatest challenge, and also ensure that we can allow for new perspectives, new ideas to be brought to the table. So I'm very pleased to have amazing panelists, and I'm going to introduce them, and I'm going to invite them to come on stage, starting with my sister Salma Sadgufa. So Salma is the Pacific Region representative of the Commonwealth Youth Council. She was also a winner of the Commonwealth 2020 Youth Award and for the Pacific region, and she is now the executive director of Outsource Fiji, which is the industry for body outsourcing industry. And she also has a social enterprise, which is called the Fusion Hub, which addresses waste management and economic inclusion for women and youth. It's very interesting. I can't wait to hear about it. Yes. And I'm going to also introduce my sister Yawa Hansen. So Yawa is a visionary leader who has spent her career unlocking opportunities for women and youth in Africa. She's also the executive director of the emerging public leaders. So Yawa is working to create better governance in African nations by investing in youth in public services. So Yawa knows deeply about the impact and the lack of governance that can actually cause a lot of challenges. And her family was forced to flee Ghana to escape political turmoil brought by a military coup d'etat. And her experience inspired her passion to improve governance, peace building, and really deepening Africa democracy. Very, very honored to be with you. Thank you. And I'm also happy to introduce Annabelle Baud, which is the head of the Commonwealth Scholarships and the Association of Commonwealth Universities. She has worked in higher education across the Commonwealth for 20 years, and Annabelle is the head of the Commonwealth Scholarship Association of Commonwealth University, where she's responsible for Commonwealth Scholarship in the UK and the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Program. So happy to have you, ladies. And I'm going to call now the men to join us so we can have this conversation about co-creation and strategic partnership. So very pleased to welcome Mr. John May. John is the Secretary General of the Duke Edinburgh International Awards. He's the world leading accreditor of young people, non-formal education and learning. He's a campaigner, storyteller, teacher, youth worker, writer, and he also has spent his whole career working with youth around the world. Thank you for doing that. And I'm also happy to call Jean-Michel Abizena. So Jean-Michel has been in the work of the genocide prevention and youth empowerment in the past decade. He was one of the founders of Peace and Love Proclaimers Youth for a Change, which is an organization that aims at creating positive change in Rwanda. And so Jean-Michel has created PLP, which is also the Work to Remember, and it's the work that has been taking place in 25 countries around the world and was attended by President Kagame, the First Lady, and Jean-Michel also founded an organization called I Debate Rwanda. I Debate Rwanda is a program that works with secondary education to teach them about the art of public deliberation and working on communication skills. Great. And so last but not least, we have our Dr. Amjad Mohamed Salim. Dr. Amjad is the manager of Inclusion and Protection and Engagement Unit at the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Cross Society based in Geneva, which is a global team focusing on protection, gender, diversity, inclusion, and he applies his extensive knowledge in peace building. And he also works with NGOs, and we're very happy to have you all as panelists. So thank you. So I'm going to start with the ladies first. So Almat is very impressive, and I'm happy to ask you two questions. So we're going to do a first round of questions and then the second one. So you are the Executive Director of Outsource Fiji. So can you please share your journey? How has the organization developed its strategic partnership to create opportunity for young people?
Thank you. Bula everyone. Who here knew that Fiji has an outsourcing sector, an outsourcing industry? I bet no one, because when I asked people, no one knew about it. So 2 years ago, before the pandemic, we formed an industry association where we gathered businesses who are in the business process outsourcing sector, infrastructure providers, and other key leaders who were involved in the industry's progression. And we realized that the industry was actually getting some traction in terms of employment creation, especially for the young people. At that point in time, we had about 2,000 people employed in the sector. Almost 67% were below the age of 30. So it is a very young demographic workforce. And then during the pandemic, we saw an incremental growth, an exponential growth, I would say, where the sector from 2,000 grew to 9,000. And that happened because Fiji was now being looked as a risk diversification location for outsourcing services. And this growth wouldn't have happened if we were not able to create strategic partnerships, work with development partners, work with our government. So what we did as an industry association is we lobbied to the government for tax incentives, for a better investment environment for BPO and ICT operators. And this aligned with their vision and goal of creating employment for the people of Fiji. So as someone spoke about alignment to vision and goals, and that was our national development priority, to be able to create employment. So we worked with the government to be able to do that. We recognized the outsourcing industry as an essential service provider. So during the pandemic, the industry continued to provide services, whereas in other countries, they were not able to continue, and that's why Fiji gained so much traction and popularity. Another thing that we did was, apart from the government partnership, we realized that we needed to develop skills. So we partnered with universities to create programs, certifications, to be able to develop talent in that area where it was much needed. And this is the only sector that continued to create employment during the pandemic. And the other thing that we did, we created partnerships with donor agencies, with governments, trade offices, so that we can engage with them and promote Fiji as an outsourcing sector as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting how you were able to, yes, can we clap for her? How you were able to develop those partnerships with governments and others. So thank you for sharing that. We come back later with some of the challenges that we might face in developing this partnership. So, Yawa, can you tell us more about a partnership that has been very central to establishing the work that you are doing today?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think when we talk about partnerships, there are two things that stick out for me. The first is it's hard to do anything of lasting value by yourself. So partnerships are part of the process to success, in my opinion. And no one can do anything of lasting value by themselves. And then the second thing that the idea of partnerships brings up to me is this African proverb that we have that says, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go far, you need to go together. So it's in that mindset that I think about partnerships. And as I bring it to the work that Emerging Public Leaders does, our vision is simple. We want to see an Africa that is peaceful, prosperous, and just. And we recognize that in order to have that outcome, we need strong government institutions. And strong institutions are built on the backs of strong, competent, and ethical talent. So the problem we're trying to solve is how do we get talented young people to raise their hand and say yes to government service? How do we help governments find the talent that will drive transformation and help Africa become great and strong? It troubles me deeply that the story of global poverty is actually mostly a story about Africa. It's estimated that by 2030, 1 out of every 3 poor people in the world will be African. And so for me, there's an urgency to getting a pipeline of competent and ethical young people interested, engaged, and into government service. So part of what we do and how we view partnerships is we recognize that this great vision we can't do by ourselves. So primarily, we form partnerships at 2 levels. 1, with our government partners, and 2, with young people themselves. To the government partner, we are a source of low-cost, high-caliber talent. And to the young person, we are a merit-based pathway into government service. We provide a 2-year fellowship that attracts talented university graduates and works as a partner with government to train them in placements. So we've been doing this since 2009, and right now have a pipeline of over 300 public servants in Liberia, in Ghana, and also in Kenya. And we're finding that we are actually just playing the role of a catalyst, bringing these 2 partners together. And by doing so, people that are ordinarily overlooked when it comes to government service, creating opportunities for women, creating opportunities for people living with disabilities. In the audience today, we have 6 of our fellows, 2 from Liberia, 2 from Ghana, and 2 from Kenya. Can my fellows wave so that people see that this is a model that is so simple, but it's effective. Our fellows have been on the forefront. When the Ebola crisis happened in Liberia, they were a trusted network that could really help government agencies respond. And most recently with the COVID crisis, we've seen our fellows volunteer their time, but many of our fellows also were the only ones in their departments with the kind of skill sets that could help their senior leaders in different ministries make sense of the data and deploy the various resources where it needed to go. So none of this works without partnership, and I encourage every young person in the audience today, no matter what your specific vision is, remember that you can't do it alone. Nothing of great and lasting value is done by yourself. And secondly, If you want to go far, you must always go together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So if we want to go far, we must go together. Thank you. I hope we all remember that. So, dear Annabelle, as the head of the Commonwealth Scholarship, can you tell us how your work offers space for young people from all regions of the Commonwealth to cooperate and to co-create?
Thank you. There we are. First of all, I just wanted to say I wasn't in the lineup for this panel. Our Secretary General, unfortunately, has fallen ill, so she wasn't able to make it today. But she does send all her best wishes. I think everything that I have to say follows on so wonderfully from what the panelists have said so far. And catalysts is definitely a word that means a lot to us when it comes to scholarships and scholarship recipients. So for over a century, the ACU, the Association of Commonwealth Universities, has brought students, scholars, academic leaders, and university professionals together across the Commonwealth. The ACU supports over 3,500 students on scholarships at any one time, and we've got nearly 90,000 alumni in our network across the Commonwealth. As well as administering the UK government's Commonwealth Chevening and Marshall Scholarship programs, we're also the custodians of the Queen Elizabeth Commonwealth Scholarships. This program is owned by the member governments of the Commonwealth, which is your governments, which is a very important part of the scheme. It's not owned by any one Commonwealth country. And it was renamed in Her Majesty's honour at the last Youth Forum in London in 2018 by His Royal Highness Prince Harry. The Queen Elizabeth programme supports scholars who are highly engaged in their communities to gain a master's degree in another country, building their academic profile and connecting with international networks to help affect positive change across the Commonwealth. Today we have Abdulaziz, who's here somewhere in the audience, I hope. He's with us at the Youth Forum. He's a scholar from Nigeria who's studying agroforestry at the University of Rwanda. International mobility is one of the most powerful means for international collaboration on global challenges. I think the fact that we're all here today, we're all here this week, is sort of testament to that fact. And while these international opportunities are transformative on a personal level, by developing capable, culturally agile and internationally connected individuals, international mobility has a broader societal value beyond the individual. Societies and communities benefit from international mobility as it generates a flow of people and ideas needed to strengthen the international cooperation, deliver on national, political, economic and social policies, build development solutions, and build peace through global citizenship. In addition to our scholarship programs, the ACU brokers networks, communities of practice and collaborative projects across our membership. For example, we have a climate resilience, a peace and reconciliation, and a higher education and the Sustainable Development Goals network, where we engage more than 2,000 individuals across our 500 member universities in the Commonwealth. We also directly connect decision makers with researchers to translate expertise into action and to support policy implementation, with an emphasis on supporting young and early career researchers to co-create research for impact. Our climate cohort, of which one of our participants, Dr. Henry Count Evans, is here with us today, trains rising star researchers to bring their ideas to policymakers to engage in global fora like CHOGM, like COP26 and COP27. Our UK government-funded Blue Charter Fellowships saw experts embedded in an action group for marine plastics, with researchers contributing to policy change on a national level, including on the use of single-use plastics in Fiji. With the Living Lands Charter being launched by heads of government at CHOGM, we're encouraging governments to embed university expertise into the action groups to harness their knowledge to support the implementation of commitments. There are many more examples of the way ACU supports offering space for young people to cooperate and co-create. It's a major focus of our work, and we believe it's key to empowering youth to take charge of our future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Annabelle. Thank you. So, John May, As the Secretary General of the Duke of Indusburg International Award and as a campaigner, in addition to your expertise at UNICEF and also other extraordinary engagement, you have co-created prospect and platform for countless of individuals. Would you please explain the relevance of co-creation and how we can have a greater impact by forming strategic collaboration across the Commonwealth?
That's quite a question. I want to talk, I guess, from a personal perspective. Partnerships are hard. Partnerships and co-creation demand that you set aside your own institutional egos and look at what a shared vision might be. And that's often really, really hard for organizations to do. I learned this for the first time about 30 years ago when I was working in a refugee camp. Most of the people in the refugee camp were under the age of 12, and of them, the majority were under the age of 7. And the organization with which I was working was doing most of the work pretty well, in that the children were being fed and there was enough water, but there just weren't enough people to be able to keep those children alive. Because as you know, if you're a little person and you don't have somebody to look after you, to dance and sing and play with you, the inside core of you shrivels up. And that's what was happening. And institutionally, we were doing all the right things, we were following the right protocols, but we were failing. And then one morning, from the local secondary school, outside the camp, on his bicycle, rode Joseph, a young person of, I guess, 14 years old. And he gathered all his friends from school and he brought them into the camp and he played games with the children and he sang songs and he saved their lives. And what I discovered in those few months that I was there and watching the way in which Joseph changed the story was that co-creation and partnership does not have to be something that follows complicated protocols. It is simply a case of individuals having a shared vision, in this case, a humanitarian one, and working hard to achieve it. Setting aside those egos that can so often exist. And I'm really fortunate that I've been able to spend the last years working in partnership with organizations around the world that have been able to set aside their institutional egos as well. Most recently, funded by the UN Foundation and the World Health Organization, a group of global organizations working with youth have come together to react to the very real needs of young people in regard to the pandemic. Global youth mobilization is what we called it, deliberately not to accentuate any particular institutional ego. And the results have been astonishing. And I think here at this forum, we're going to see another extraordinary thing begin. Because another group of organizations are coming together and forming a very special alliance for young people, looking to find what our shared visions might be, looking to see what we might be able to achieve together, knowing that it'll be hard to be able to work out what those might be and what work we can do, but certain that if, as individual organizations, we work together, then we can achieve so much more.
Thank you very much, John. How many of us are willing to put aside our personal or organizational ego and really create true strategic partnerships and share visions with others? How many of us are willing to do that? Great, thank you. Thanks. I think this was very powerful, thank you. So, Jean-Michel, can you please tell us more about the iDebate journey? And also, can you tell us what lessons you have learned in co-creation and collaboration during that journey?
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. That's a very low good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you. So, my name is Jean-Michel, and I am the founder and executive director of iDebate Rwanda. What I'm going to do, it's very hard to ask a founder to talk about the organization because you feel like that's the best thing in the world and everybody should see that. But what I would do is I will explain to you a little bit on what was the idea behind it. I think iDebate is a debate program that works with secondary students here in Rwanda. I would say that our purpose can be divided into two. We are first an education program, and secondly, we're a peace-building program. The first part of an education program. I don't know about, well, the Commonwealth is quite, vast, but every African, I don't know, every African in the room, I'm sure that we all know what it feels like to be educated in a colonial education system, where the teacher is called the master, and the only way to pass class is for you to repeat what the teacher told you, right? That's all you do. But the problem with that is then that we are creating robots. We are creating people who know how to follow orders, and then by the time they're done with the education system, we tell them, be innovators, create your own jobs, and do all of that. And the question is, how can they do that when they have learned that the only way to succeed is to follow orders? So for us, what we teach, first of all, is two skills. The skills of critical thinking, the ability to process information before coming to a conclusion, and then secondly, the skills of communication. We live in an information age. We need to learn how to communicate better. And we are against this education system that is all about rote memorization and that is all about following orders. And we see young people as being people who should be seen but not heard. So what we want to do is to be able to change that. And secondly, it's a peace-building organization. Yes. And I don't know if you watch anywhere in the world, one of the things that you will notice is that we can barely listen to one another. One of the things is that if somebody disagrees with you, you treat them as an enemy. And that we can see it in our political spheres, but we can also see in the fact that you have people who believe the same thing as you, people who look like you, and as the world is becoming more and more diverse, we need to learn how to deal with differences. We should not erase differences, we should engage in our differences. And I think that teaching young people the art of argumentation, disagreeing passionately without resorting to violence is a skill that is important more so ever now than it has ever been. So what have I learned? And I think, first of all, being one of the last people to speak, you always feel like there's nothing left to say. But one of the things that I would say is, number one is, we all think that when we are going to create partnerships, we only think about the big institutions. We all think as young people that when you start, the government is going to be on your side, that you're going to get a lot of money, and everyone is going to love it because it's a great idea. I've learned that ideas are only 5% of what makes things work. that at the end of it, you have to build relationships, and that is what everyone said. But I think it's also that the most unlikely of partnerships or the most unlikely of relationships are going to make the biggest difference. When we started, I would say nobody believes in any idea. Everyone says that we believe in ideas, but it's not true. People want to see things that have worked. But the problem is, how do you reach there? You need to, it's almost like one of my mentors told me that people will only support you when you no longer need their support. But part of what I've noticed is that for us, the biggest partnerships or the biggest partnership came from two people. The students that we worked with, and then also with the teachers. When we worked with the students and they were included in everything that we did, they became our ambassadors. And it didn't matter whether we get support from government or we get money from a foundation. What mattered is these people believed that this is important and we're going to be part of it. And then secondly, it's also the teachers. The teachers care. Well, we hope that they care about the education of their students. So when you treat them as partners, they feel like you're not here to undermine their work, but you're only there to support their work, right? And I've seen that sometimes we undermine the people because we think, what is a student going to bring to me? They're not bringing me dollars. They're not bringing me millions of, they're not the government that are going to give me anything. Right? But the thing is that if you don't build, starting from them, if you don't build a relationship with them that is based on trust, and that is based on almost this idea that we're in it together and it's a win-win, then all these other partnerships are just papers. Like MOUs are fine, but they're just papers at the end of the day, right? Yes. So part of what we have to do is, how do we build lasting relationships with the people that we work with, and how do we also make sure that those who are benefiting and then also those who are impacted by the work that we do, how do we make sure that we include them in everything? They are as important as a government minister. And if you treat it like this, then I think we have a chance of building something that would stay for a very long time. And I think partnerships that are based just on, these big institutions, they are great. But if they're not based on something that is more solid, when they're not based on systems and relationships that are trust-based and that are real, then at the end of the day, we're just staying here. But the real work happens. Sometimes it's, a lot of people say, how do we change education? In the classroom, there. We can do all the policies, all the great things. It's fine, it's great. But the real thing happens when a young person has a teacher that believes in them, trusts them, and who's able to deliver something that will change their life.
Thank you very much. This is very interesting. Please, if you can note your questions, we're going to open the floor because we want to hear from you. And if you have any questions for our speakers, we're going to leave a few minutes so you can ask them questions. But thank you very much, because I'm learning a lot. I'm going to review a lot of my own strategy after this panel. So thank you. So Salma, can you tell us about your work, how you've made room for co-creation to increase ownership in the work that you do?
Sorry, is this on? Okay. So I'd like to talk about my social enterprise, which was also, and I think it will resonate with a lot of young people here. So my social enterprise, the Fusion Hub, initially we started out with transforming waste into sustainable furniture and trying to create a sustainable lifestyle for the people of Fiji, because of course waste is a major issue for us. Our livelihoods are dependent on the oceans. So initially the idea was with me, and I went to partners, I went everywhere, I struggled to find the right people to work with, to collaborate with, but it was so difficult, it was so hard to do that as a young person, as a woman, and a woman trying to create furniture from waste. So that was a question mark. People were questioning it a lot, the quality and everything. And so it was very challenging, very difficult. But what we did was, when we started engaging, what I did personally was I started engaging with communities that don't normally have access to economic opportunities. So we started working with communities, help them create a cooperative model where women from a community would come together, they'd form this cooperative business model, and we would train them, my organization would train them on how we can make value-added products from waste. And we just moved on from waste. We're not just dealing with waste, but other products too. So that is one way we saw that people can work together to minimize risks, to minimize failures, to share resources, to come together to create something and have economic opportunities, equal economic opportunities. So that is something that we work together to create. And we incorporated sustainable development goals. Usually the communities, they're not aware about what sustainable development goals are. So we're able to create that education around sustainable development goals and how their small projects could be part of the bigger solution, the bigger picture. And these women were able to, once they got the economic opportunities, they were able to come out of so many social issues that they were faced with, especially in the Pacific Islands. It's not very common for women from communities to be earning a living, to be doing something on their own, to be having their own startups. So it was a very challenging time to be able to get them to think outside the box and to think about their communities, to think about their livelihoods as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm hearing a lot around people, around building relationships, and strategic partnership. At the end of the day, I think it's also about people and the trust that is being built, not so much of the processes like we heard. It's actually very interesting. So Yawa, can you tell us, please, what would you say, what advice do you want to give to young people here who wants to develop strategic partnership involving high-level stakeholders? What advice do you want to give to our young leaders?
Well, I would encourage every young person in this room who has a big idea to don't despise the small beginning. Yes. The small beginning, especially in this Instagram age where you're probably seeing examples of other people that you know who you may have gone to school with or may be older than, who seem to have a higher profile than you, to be doing better than you. And I think sometimes there's this competitiveness that makes you sometimes jump the gun with an idea that's not yet tested. So I think my first advice would be don't be in a rush to go public. Perfect the idea. Look out for people who can collaborate with you, even if it means your first couple of engagements are free. I also have a social entrepreneurship background, and it made a difference when I came to the scene as the founder of a women's leadership NGO. It made a difference when I went to other women's NGOs and was just really learning from them. How do you put programming together? Who are you partnering with? How are you finding the money? I was volunteering at their programs. I was, doing things that were amplifying others first. And that helped me learn, and it made me, in my opinion, a little more sharper when there became more of a public face to my enterprise. So the first piece of advice is don't despise that small beginning. Don't be afraid to not be in the limelight yet. Perfect the idea, solidify yourself, build your own personal skills. Because the second piece of advice that I wanted to share is improve your communication skills. You will be judged by what you find words for. So some of us have great ideas but haven't really perfected it. And I know part of this forum, there's going to be a pitch competition, and there's some sessions that are helping us really enhance that part of our skill set. Because the communication skills, I think, really makes a difference when you're able to communicate clearly, concisely, and confidently about the ideas that you've created. And then I think lastly, it kind of builds on what John said a few moments ago about partnerships are hard. It is challenging. You require a certain humility. Partnering with someone or an institution, an individual, starts first with building trust. And trust can be hard. Trust means that there may be some unanswered questions, there may be some anxieties, there may be some, and you may have had bad experiences in the past of having partnered with someone that broke your trust or didn't do what they said they would do, etc. So I feel like most of us are haunted by the experiences. If we didn't live them out, we know of them from other people. And so we're going it alone because you don't want to trust anybody with your idea, and you hold it so close. It's your baby, but it's a precious baby that when you hold too tight, you kill it. So one of my learnings as a social entrepreneur was having that humility to recognize that I'm not the source of all the knowledge. Other people can help me take care of my baby, and to trust them enough to cede some of the responsibility that was on me. And quite honestly, the organization is the better for it. So I would encourage you to not be afraid of partnering. You partner once, it doesn't work out, don't be afraid to try again, because you can look at the top 10 companies in the world. All of them have co-founders. So maybe start there. You have an idea, maybe you were good at talking about it, but you need someone who can do the internal work of operations and other things. So complement yourself with others who can be strong in the areas where you may be weak. Because if you really want to go far, you can't do it by yourself. And nothing of great and lasting value gets done alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So Annabelle, can you tell us the importance of financing young people's education?
Thank you. Yeah, there's always that person in the room that needs to talk about the money, and unfortunately that often falls to me. I'd just like to make a couple of points. The first is on the partnership kind of element. I think at the ACU what we found is when we facilitate partnerships, when we broker partnerships, it makes the conversations with donors easier because they're getting more bang for their buck. And their investment is sort of seen as perhaps going a bit further. A good example of this is we've been running over the past few years a program in East Africa called the Partners for Enhanced Blended Learning. It was funded by the UK government, and it was partnerships across a number of universities in East Africa, as well as with some partners in different countries. And it was about upskilling academics in those countries sort of en masse because, of a sort of capacity issues in some subject areas. That was a very successful program. The impact was demonstrable. And tonight we're actually launching the West African version of this program, which has been funded by the Australian government. So we've got a different funder, a proven model, and one of the really key things about that model is the partnerships. We're bringing lots of people together. So I think that's my first point about financing. I think my second point on scholarships is, we need investment in all levels of education. I think we probably all understand in this room, in most countries in the Commonwealth, certainly including the UK, investment in education is sometimes lacking. Investment in higher education is often lacking, especially. So we do need sponsorship programs, we need scholarship programs, we need investment in those programs to enable the mobility that I spoke about earlier. But we also need equity of access to those programs. So we need to ensure that everybody is accessing those programs, not just the elites in a society. And that's really where I think scholarships like Commonwealth scholarships, one of our aims particularly is about equity of access. And using ODA UK aid funding to really diversify the pool of candidates that are being internationally mobile, because I think in this room we all know that diversity is what brings more sustainable and more effective development. So yeah, that's my 2 points on financing.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Annabelle. So John May, can you tell our young people here in the room how can they partner meaningfully with decision makers?
Oh, what a question.
That's an easy one.
I can tell you how not to do it.
Okay.
I can, well, in my mid-20s, I had become a deputy head teacher, deputy principal of a school. And I had probably a little less humility than I should have. I think it would be fair to say. And I was invited along to a conference as a youth delegate. And it became very apparent very quickly that the other people who were at the conference didn't see the skills that I had developed, didn't see the different currencies that I held. What they saw was a young person. And when I offered a view in a group full of older people, there was a certain amount of disdain shown. And in fact, at one point, one man, and it was a man, leant over and said, "Laddie, when I was your age, I was seen and not heard. That's what should happen to you." And that really threw me, because I thought that I had the same ideas that they did and the same great thoughts about the future, and I wasn't being given any opportunity to voice them. There has to be, and I think there has been, institutional change in a lot of places to recognize that young people deserve to have a voice. But what I would say to you as young people is, you have a whole set of different currencies. You have a whole set of different skills and attributes, and you have a whole set of different experiences, some of which come from you being young, but some of which come from your other lived experiences. And that piece about being a great communicator is really important, because you need to communicate all of those. That's your responsibility. Then it's the responsibility of organizations like mine and like others represented in this room, not to say, "Laddie," but to listen. And then we have true partnership. And then we change the world.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. So, Jean-Michel, what is your advice to our young community here? Your last advice.
I think I'm going to take it from the Bible. It says that let no one look down on you because you are young, but then you should be an example in character and in skills, in everything. So when a young people says, "Oh, no one is taking me seriously," that's the story of every person who has ever been young. But part of our responsibility, just like he said, is how do I make sure that people listen to me even when they don't want to? And then also, how do I make sure that I'm a great example when it comes to deeds and then character and all of that? So I would say that do all that you have to do, use all the energy and skills that you have, and then make sure that even if people don't listen to you, if you stay long enough, they will. And you just got to keep on talking. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. This is the end of our panel. And before we close, I would like to invite Dr. Amjad for the closing reflections. I personally learned a lot from this panel about trust, about relationships, about community engagement. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences. So Dr. Salim, I'm going to invite you for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to echo, it's been a rich conversation. It's hard to follow the Bible in terms of the reflections, so I'm going to try my best. But I think that there are a couple of things that came up very, very strongly from what I heard. And so maybe I will share kind of, I think I came up with 6 things that I feel that you need to kind of think about when you're doing partnerships. But also starting off from the fact that you have to do partnerships. It's not a question of if I do a partnership, right? It is, I have to do a partnership, but the question is how do we get engaged in partnerships? Because you cannot do it alone. And I think what COVID taught us was precisely that, right? You need to engage in partnerships because there are others who may have skills or resources that you can access. But the first one from my perspective is that you have to take the responsibility. You can't wait. You can't wait for something to happen. So you have to take that responsibility to build those partnerships. Because if you wait, it's not going to happen. So you have to have that responsibility. The second one is about building relationships, and we talked about that a lot there. We talked about building those relationships and brokering those relationships. And the third one for me is ensuring respect, because partnerships are hard. Understanding where the other person comes from is important. Yesterday we talked a lot about inclusion and ensuring all the voices are heard. That means respect. So if you really want to build those partnerships, you have to respect where the others are coming from. If we can just do a quick experiment, I'm going to borrow it from a famous Sri Lankan cricketer. If you can hold out your hand like this, everyone, just hold out your hand, up like that. Okay, take one finger. I want you to start clapping. Can you hear anything?
No.
No. Take 2 fingers. Take 3 fingers. Take 4 fingers. Take 5 fingers. You need all 5 fingers to make the sound. That means you need to build the partnerships there. You need to respect the diversity, because all your fingers are different as well, right? So you need to ensure that you respect that diversity. So for that to happen, you need 3 things. You need humility, and I think we've heard a lot about that today. We need to be humble. We need to know what we do not, we need to know and acknowledge that we do not know everything. Because sometimes, unfortunately, we live in a day and age where leaders and people do not acknowledge that they don't know everything. The second one, I think, is you need to have patience, because as John was saying, partnerships are hard. You need to build that relationship. So have the patience. And for me, I will add the third thing, which is around having the humor or enjoying it as well. Don't make it a chore. Don't make it, as Yao was saying, it's not complicated. It's simple. So there you go. The 3 R's: responsibility, relationships, respect, and then you have humility, patience, and humor. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But thank you very much. Thanks to all our panelists, and we look forward to the following session in the program. Thank you.
A round of applause for Olivia and her panelists. Thank you very much, Olivia, for taking us through that session, co-creation and partnerships. It's very important. And a few things that we can maybe reflect on as we await the 5th plenary. Something that was said here is never be afraid to collaborate. Very important. And if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, let us all go together, which is something that I feel like we should take into consideration. And another thing that stuck with me was we are not the source of all knowledge. So don't be afraid to partner, and if at first you don't succeed, try again. It's not that everyone gets it right at the first go, so let us keep trying, and the more we go at it, the more chances that we will be able to succeed. And partnerships need a lot of respect, is one of the things that we can be able to take from this. And another thing, let us first perfect our craft before we think it is able to or ready to go out into the world. So that's very important. And last but not least, do not be afraid to not be in the limelight yet. Everyone has their own timing and everything happens for a reason. So let us just let all that sink in as we get ready for the next plenary session. So thank you once again, Olivia, for taking us through that. Another round of applause for that. All right, so this session is going to be about the economic imperative, skills development for the 21st century jobs. So the person who's going to be taking us through this is none other than Ingrid Karangwaire from Imbuto Foundation. You're welcome.
Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, dear ministers, it's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Ingrid Kalangoire, and I am more than pleased to be here as your host for this session. Before we get started, allow me to introduce our keynote speaker, someone with a great passion for the community, youth empowerment, and sports. Allow me to welcome Honorable Kinson Casimir, the Minister of Youth Development, Sport, and from St. Lucia. Thank you.
Heads of government, youth leaders, journalists and media personnel, Commonwealth youth leaders, future leaders of our great nations, I greet you on behalf of the people and the simply beautiful island of St. Lucia, and I am honored to deliver this brief feature address on the topic, the economic imperative, skills development for the 21st century jobs. As one of the younger youth ministers in the region, I advise first and foremost that I may be just a little bit controversial, so please bear with me. I want to start my address by firstly defining skills development. And skills development is a process which enables trainees to gain access to knowledge and abilities, career ethics, and good working attitude, which may enable them to gain employment. Keyword, attitudes that will be able to allow them to gain employment. As such, I want to encourage first and foremost employers and indeed Commonwealth governments to give due consideration to the mixed model employment embraced as a result of COVID-19. Now, one suggestion is a 4-day work week, with Fridays being reserved for working from home. I want to say that most of what I say today will be implemented in the near future, whether we like it or not. The benefits of a 4-day work week includes an increase in employee satisfaction, company commitment, and of course, teamwork. A 4-day work week also decreases stress levels and provides mental health. And we know that there are so many studies on mental health in this society. Now, one study conducted by Caroline Castillon in the Forbes magazine indicates that 21st century jobs have moved away from 5-day work weeks. In that survey of over 1,000 Americans, 9 out of 10 people believe the 5-day work week is outdated. Not only that, but about 80% of respondents say the pandemic has increased the desire for a 4-day work week. An overwhelming 98% believe it would improve their mental health. In this study, the author suggests that during a 4-day work week, the focus should be working in teams, while a day's work from home breeds the opportunity for individuals to tap into their own talents and skills in the interest of company goals. With this being the case, our education system amongst the Commonwealth nations must develop a deeper symbiotic relationship with what this modern suggestions is. COVID-19 and the modern technology has watered down every requirement for things to be done at a strict particular time frame. Modern research continues to evaluate the modern man's attention span and ask whether work is better done throughout a long 9-to-5 day or whether or not businesses and government services are better off making use of the modern-day worker's short attention span. In a recent study, Julia Gifford, she used the time tracking and productivity app Destime and concluded that the most productive people work for 52 minutes at a time, then break for 17 minutes before getting back to it. As such, we've seen in the 21st century a significant reduction in jobs requiring 9 to 5 time frames, with a move towards work or task being completed within the confines of an extended 24-hour day. Modern technology has therefore caused the requirements of our education system to move away from school classes being based on a similar standard time. As such, it is important that we as a Commonwealth consider whether we need to adjust our curriculum to reflect this fact at an earlier age. The next generation of children are far more advanced with the use of computers and technology at an earlier age. Online classrooms before COVID-19 in some countries were introduced closer to teenage years. Our people must consider whether or not it is beneficial to continue to promote time management in a relaxed environment from home and promote a more proficient school system that makes better use of an expanded 24-hour day. As such, schools should focus time spent by the nation's youth in the classrooms as time to teach more social skills, etiquette, basic finance management, tolerance of differences, teach focus, teach cross-cultural communications, teach curiosity, problem solving, or conflict resolution. All these skills are highly required in the modern global work environment. In addition to this, Commonwealth nations must work harder to ensure updated skills databases are created to ensure that skills are provided for government. The driving force behind most modern economies come from small businesses and/or the gig economy. Government and the private sector must capture all the skills available to their local economy and ensure that it can be geolocated in the communities and, of course, available to everyone, every employer in the Commonwealth. Having knowledge of all the persons who graduate or return home from school with a particular skill is essential in ensuring a productive society. Not only will this provide more frequent employment to the nation's youth, including school leavers who struggle to get into the workforce, but it will ensure that governments continue to make strategic decisions on the education system based on skills available and those that are not. In conclusion, the ILO has indicated that while the youth population has grown by 30%, the participation in the workforce has decreased by 12%. Though this can be partly attributed to longer time spent in education, far too many young people graduate from the education system with traditional skills needed, but are not equipped with skills needed to be functional in an increasingly global village. At the end of the day, young people are indeed spending a longer time in the education system, only to get into an establishment and have to spend an inordinate amount of time learning the culture and the specific requirements of that business. As such, greater emphasis must be placed on a different set of skills, including empathy, adaptability, intuition, data interpretation, software management, virtual meeting etiquette, and budgeting, whether it is budgeting to balance your financial gains or whether budgeting remains the fact that you need to balance your time spent at work with the time spent on oneself. The fact is, in this modern world, we need to adapt to what is needed to be productive. We will need not only to think outside of the box, but we may need to throw the box entirely. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Thank you for setting the tone to actually the challenges and issues that we're going to discuss. To help us understand some of the challenges that the Minister just mentioned, I would like to welcome our panel. Today on our panel, the first speaker will be Professor Asha Singh Kanwal. She's a world's leading advocate of learning for sustainable development. She's the president and CEO of the Commonwealth of Learning. With over 35 years of experience, she has made outstanding contributions in the areas of teaching, research, and international development. We welcome you. We will also be joined by Dr. Kevin Frey, CEO of Generational Unlimited. As both an entrepreneur and an executive, Dr. Kevin has spent his career at the nexus of the private and public sectors, spanning the education, technology, human capital, and international development spheres. We welcome you. The panel will also be joined by Mr. Will Straw, CEO of the Prince Trust International. He leads their role delivering education, employability, and enterprise programs for young people in over 17 countries across the Commonwealth and beyond. The Prince Trust, worth to mention, the Prince Trust International was founded by His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, to tackle the global crisis in youth unemployment, building on 4 decades of experiences in the UK. We welcome you. Our panel will also be joined by Mrs. Uli Keita, Executive Director of Youth Connect Africa, an initiative of the government of Rwanda and the UNDP, based here in Kigali. She has over 17 years of wealth of experience in expertise in the domains of international development, particularly in policy advocacy work on women, youth employment and empowerment, governance, peace and security. Welcome. And lastly, to join our panel, an exciting young gentleman called Yusuf Nwadi. He is Rwandan. He's an entrepreneur with a passion for education and technology. He is the CEO and co-founder of Bag Innovation, a technology startup using magnification and experimental learning to prepare students for jobs. You're all welcome. I'll start off with Professor Asha. Yes. From the perspective of the Commonwealth of Learning, what do the 21st century skills mean and what are the opportunities offered by distance learning to the youth acquiring those skills?
Thank you for that question. But before I respond, let me introduce the audience to the Commonwealth of Learning. We are one of the 3 intergovernmental organizations of the Commonwealth. Our job is to promote education and training using technologies. And we are not based in London, we are based in Vancouver, hosted by the Government of Canada, which is why some of you may not have seen us before. From the point of view of the Commonwealth of Learning, let me also respond to what the Honourable Minister just said about 4-day working weeks, teamwork, and 1 day for reflection and well-being. We are just implementing it already. So, Minister, we are on the right track. I'll make 3 points quickly here. I've got 3 minutes, I understand. The first is that it's very significant that we are still talking about 21st century skills in the 3rd decade of the 21st century. We've been talking about this since the 1990s. And what are these skills? And of course, everybody quotes McKinsey report, and everybody talks about these skills in some form or the other. And the future of work, they say, will require 4 foundational skills: cognitive, interpersonal, self-leadership, and digital. And people with employable skills will be individuals, and all of you are here, the youth, who can add value beyond what can be done by automated systems. Minister referred to empathy, who work efficiently in a digital environment, and who can demonstrate resilience to adapt to new ways of working and new occupations, such as those that have been required during the pandemic. So my first point is that I think we've spoken enough about these 21st century skills. It's now time for action, from commitment to action. My second point is about, what are these future skills? The Vice Chancellor of the Open University of Mauritius carried out a survey of employers asking them what would be the skills required for 5 years down the line for work. But because of the phenomenal changes in technology, the pandemic, and global instability, they couldn't say what those jobs would be. And estimates suggest that by the middle of this decade, 85 million jobs may disappear and 97 new million jobs will come up. So what are we going to do with all this confusion? And Robert Aoun proposes that we equip the youth with 3 literacies that will prepare them for this uncertainty. First, human literacy, which prepares students to perform jobs that only human beings can do. Human literacy will help them to make ethical choices, equip them for the social engagement through effective communications. The second literacy would be data literacy, is essential in a world driven by data, and learners must be able to find meaning in the flood of information around us and the fake news and all that kind of stuff that goes on. Third, technological literacy is essential if we are to understand machines and their uses. Learners must be able to deploy software and hardware in order to maximize their powers to achieve and create. So these are the 3 literacies, that Robert Aoun referred to. Let me add a fourth, which is the climate literacy. Youth can be the champions to transform behaviors and promote environmental conservation among their peers, families, and communities. I remember when we were growing up and when we didn't want to listen to our parents, they said, "We are your elders and betters, you better listen to us." Now we can say, "These are the younger and wiser, please listen to them in matters of climate change." So if we equip our learners with these 4 literacies, in fact, I would even say fluencies, we will be preparing them for the brave new world that lies ahead. So the second point I'm making is that we need to integrate these. We don't have to talk about them. We've got to integrate them at all levels in all disciplines in the curriculum. The third point, distance and online learning have the potential to foster these literacies and promote lifelong learning. Considering the many careers that individuals will change during their lifespan, distance and online learning provides a viable opportunity for skilling and reskilling at scale at a fraction of the costs. I'll give you an example of the called Coursera Workforce Recovery Program, which we implemented during the pandemic to skill and reskill people for employment and re-employment, where over 150,000 Commonwealth citizens had free access. We provided them with free Coursera licenses to over 4,000 courses from some of the top universities in the world. The program was very popular among the 18 to 40-year-olds, if you want to stretch the definition of youth. Even though connectivity was often a challenge, learners used mobile devices or library facilities in what has been a life-changing experience. CALL added value by establishing help desks to provide on-site academic and administrative support to learners, and this was usually done in collaboration with ministries of education. This was especially valuable for first-time online learners because many of them were located in very remote areas, and the completion rates were very high at 40%. Normally, MOOCs and online programs have completion rates of about 10 to 15%. This was 40% and above. So high success rates. And just to share with you an example, yesterday when we went for getting our badges from that accreditation center, one of the volunteers, young person, he says, "Oh, Commonwealth of Learning, thank you. Thank you for giving me the Coursera license. I've done 13 certificates I've earned over the last 1 year using that license, and I'm going to now apply to a university in Canada." So there you go. And of course, courses in business, computing, etc. were very popular. And learners from Asia and the Caribbean were very interested in high-tech IT courses, such as data sciences, computer sciences, IT services. learners from Africa opted for courses in business development and entrepreneurship. In the Pacific, there was a high demand for vocational skills as well as accounting and self-development. And this is very interesting because there was a special demand for sports and recreation-related courses in the Caribbean. So my third point is that during the pandemic, we've seen this huge momentum towards self-directed learning. So how do we build on this momentum to promote lifelong learning for all and build learning societies? Governments have a role. Instead of looking at, silos like primary, secondary, tertiary, let them look at the whole spectrum of lifelong learning. And for individuals and institutions, if institutions could recognize these qualifications, we could have a kind of transformation in the way we develop skills for the future.
Thank you very much, Professor Akan. That's very informative for all of us. Dr. Kevin, Generation Unlimited is championing a global movement of actors for youth, employment, and entrepreneurship. Could you please help us appreciate the scope of this global challenge and why partnership is key to addressing it?
Sure. And I really appreciated actually the last plenary, which talked a lot about partnerships. Yes. The size of the problem is substantial. So 267 million young people globally right now are not in employment, are not in education, are not in training. Of the lucky young people who are employed, 90% globally are actually working in the informal economy. So we're talking about unregulated, precarious work that often does not deliver a dignified livelihood. Layer on top of that the twin transitions that we're seeing right now to the digital economy, to the green economies, and then finally the gig economy. McKinsey is actually projecting that by 2027, 50% of all employment will be in the freelance or gig economy. So I think there's no question that some folks in the audience, I'm sure, have heard of this description of the VUCA world that we're living in, this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, is very different than the one we're emerging from. So why Generation Unlimited, why partnership? And I think the last session really got to the heart of this, but when you talk about skills and employment, when you talk about school to work, learning, turning, transitions, governments can't solve this on their own. Private sector can't solve it on their own, and nor can young people. If you think about governments, they're the supply side. They can deliver education and training at scale. But the question is, what kind of skills are they teaching? And I think we all know that many of these education systems are teaching skills for yesterday's economy, and we need to start teaching skills for tomorrow's economy. So who knows what those skills are? Well, that's the private sector. The private sector is doing the hiring. In some senses, they're the ones building the future. So we need the public sector to come together with the private sector and young people to be able to solve this global skills and employment challenge. And that's why Generation Unlimited, on a global level, we bring together heads of state, CEOs of some of the world's biggest organizations, young people, civil society players, to solve these problems together. We also do that at a country level. We're operating in 53 countries right now, where we have governments working together with private sector and young people to try to tackle this challenge.
Thank you. That's a great insight. I'll go to Mrs. Keita. Speaking from the perspective of the work that the Youth Connect Africa is doing to address the policies affecting youth, how can policy making be more adaptable and to enable national and regional investments in skills development?
Thank you, Ingrid, and good afternoon to you all. Skills development is definitely key if we are to ensure that young people have decent jobs and opportunities. And so, excuse me, if you look at the African continent, we are moving from an exporter mindset to becoming creators of raw materials, but also bringing our young people in the process. So skills development in the areas of agriculture, infrastructure, creative industry, manufacturing, you name it. We need to have sound policies for young people to be better placed in jobs for the 21st century. And I'll just give you 3 main policies that we can quickly act on. You have, first of all, the digital economy. COVID-19 has shown us that we can no longer ignore information technology, especially for young people. We need young people to develop the skills in data management, cybersecurity, computer engineering, or even social media management. To use social media, for example, as e-commerce. We have lots of young people who have actually used social media when we were all confined to do businesses. So digital economy is a policy that we should act on, one. The second one, as the CEO of Generation Unlimited alluded to, is the green economy. We know climate change is an issue. We see it, we live it every day. And so for Africa, the young people in Africa, we need to invest in things related to climate change, to soil fertility, to sustainable agriculture. We need to bring our young people to see the climate and agriculture as sexy, as something to be involved in for the future. The third one for me would be the service economy, because all of these things that I've just mentioned, you cannot actually accomplish any of these if the young people don't have the soft skills. They need to be able to communicate. In the previous session, someone was talking about the importance of communication. Young people need to be trained in communication skills, in interpersonal skills, in leadership skills, so that they can sell, they can trade, they can communicate, they can be better employees. So those 3 policy areas for me are important for us to look at right now. And this is why Youth Connect Africa has started this youth policy analysis work on the continent with partners of development partners, governments in Africa, and the young people themselves. We are trying to look at policies for young people in this COVID recovery period. What can we do in terms of the 3 things, for example, that I've mentioned? What can we do to make sure that our young people are ready to tackle this emerging and changing world, so that when another pandemic hits again, as His Excellency President Kagame mentioned, it's not a matter of time that we will have another pandemic. Is Africa ready to respond to another disaster like we had a couple of years ago? So those things for me are very important, and this is what Youth Connect Africa is endeavoring, working on youth policy analysis across the continent.
Thank you very much, Madam Keita. And it's very true. Are we ready, really? Moving back to you, Will Strong. The Prince Trust International, actually last year, in 2021, you conducted a research on the future of work. Could you please briefly tell us what key emerging observation from the research came out?
Thanks, everyone, for the session this afternoon. Prince's Trust International delivers programs in around 18 countries around the world, working with local partners. We work with 40 partners, delivering programs to keep young people engaged with their education, helping them find entry-level positions and starting their own businesses as well. Understanding what young people need for the future of work is absolutely vital to our program development. So that's why we launched this research last year on the future of work. And on Thursday of this week, we'll be publishing an updated report surveying 10,000 young people from 10 countries, primarily in the Commonwealth. And what we have found from this research, where we ask, what are young people's, how do they feel about the impact of COVID-19 on their employment prospects? What are their hopes and aspirations for the future? And then what do they think government, business and civil society can do to support them? So on the pandemic, perhaps no surprise, but we found that about 4 in 10 young people have been affected with their income or earnings have been affected. We found that a significant number of young people were not able to return to work or had to leave employment altogether. And a staggering 1 in 2 felt their mental health was affected. So that is the backdrop when we think about the skills of the future. But there's some cause for optimism as well, and to the points that other speakers have made, there is significant interest from young people in jobs in the green economy and in the digital economy, and in the caring economy as well, as the demographics of the world lead to greater ageing, and so there's more caring needed. We then asked what young people wanted to see, and I might just see a show of hands here. How many of you in the audience think that education systems at the moment are providing young people with the skills for the world of work? Hands up if you think education systems are preparing young people for the world of work. And conversely, hands up if you think that education systems are not preparing young people for the world of work. Quite overwhelming. I mean, I think you are a more cynical bunch than those that we surveyed, but it was absolutely clear that young people's primary desire was to see education system providing those skills. And what are those skills? We put a whole series of different skills to young people, and we found that it's those life skills, skills like self-confidence, communication, resilience, problem-solving, teamwork, that were even higher than ending school with a high school diploma or even a university education. Digital skills also very high there. So we must do more to ensure that young people are leaving education with those skills. But young people were also saying that the business community could do more, to take a chance on young people, to provide more entry-level positions, to provide more internships that could lead to permanent employment. And then third, young people had a very significant interest in entrepreneurship. And I think that speaks to the point that Kevin was making. We know the demographics of many parts of the world, including sub-Saharan Africa, are changing rapidly. In the Commonwealth, the majority of the population are under the age of 25. And that means that jobs are going to have to be created by the young people themselves, turning from job seekers to job creators. And that's a major part of our research.
Thank you very much, Mr. Well. You've just finished it well for Yusuf to take on the floor. Tell us, Yusuf, the work that BAG Innovation is doing, and really at the intersection of education and employers. Also, what role has technology really enabled you to scale to the number of opportunities that you've been able to create for the young people?
Yes. Yes. Great. Thank you very much. So at BAG Innovation, what we do is we're essentially an edtech startup based here in Kigali, Rwanda. We started about 5 years ago. And essentially what we do is we basically work with employers to design work experience programs that actually give young people, job seekers, students, or graduates a taste of what it's like to actually work in a specific role at a specific company. And what we're trying to achieve with that is we're trying to, for example, I always tell this joke that in my office, I always receive a lot of students and graduates who are about my age, and they're always asking me about, hey, can I get a job? And the first question that I ask them is, what can you do? Right? And their answer is anything. Right? And I'm like, okay, great. So I've been struggling with this financial model for our startup. Can you do it, please? Right? And then it just becomes, they just realize that they really don't have those skills to actually get a job. And it's really our way to say, you know, you're trying to tackle the problem at the wrong time. You know, young people, we need to realize that we need to start working on our career development from the first day in university, from the first day in high school. We need to realize that education is not going to prepare us for the job because millions of people have a degree, right? And as an employer, you're not interested in looking at a lot of CVs. You're interested in looking at who has something special on their CV. So basically what BAG does is we go to employers and we say, hey, what are some of the roles that you're looking at hiring for in the next 10 or even 12 months? Give us a job description of all those roles, and with our learning designers, we design tasks and what we call experiences. So a student can go on our platform and they can select a sector of interest, so say marketing, and right away we give them a lot of different companies that have posted tasks that you would do if you're a marketing manager in that role. And your goal as a student is to take on that task and actually complete it. We give you a lot of guidance throughout the steps, and what we're trying to say is, hey, as soon as you complete that task, we can realize that, hey, you're only ready at 20% to work in a marketing role at this specific company. would you like to actually improve this specific skill? And therefore, we create learning experiences that actually take them through that experience so they can come back and take those tasks. And also at the same time, one thing that I have to mention, this is also a perfect way for a lot of young people to be able to build a portfolio of skills. So one of the simplest way that we like to describe BAG is, for all the tech guys here, is if you take GitHub and you basically incorporate it with Coursera. So you're basically helping a young person say, I'm going to do this task, I'm going to fail, and I'm going to learn, and I'm going to come back and do it again. So by the time they go to their job interview and an employer asks them, how many years of experience do you have for an entry-level job? They're able to answer and say, I haven't been fortunate enough to get an internship because there are not that many. But I've been on the BAG platform for the last 6 to 12 months where I've been completing real tasks, and you can see my profile and my all the proof of actual work. So you can take a better decision to hire me. Yeah, so that's essentially what BAG does.
That's quite impressive. We've been hearing all about employability and the issue of skills, but now I think in the audience we have a couple youth who would like to make some intersections. So please, take note of your questions, and we will do just one more round of questions and then jump on to you. You can ask all your questions. Professor Asher, quick question. We've spoken about the role of the youth. Yusuf just mentioned it. We've spoken about the policies, the government. We also spoke about partners. Now, please tell us real quick, what's the main challenge that should be really addressed to make sure that the young people are really do have access to these 21st century skills? Just one main challenge.
Okay. One major issue, let me share an example of what we are doing for girls. And these are the most marginalized girls in the remotest regions in 10 countries. It's called Girls Inspire. And it's a kind of holistic program where we are teaching them technical skills, whether it's mobile repairs, carpentry, sewing, baking, whatever. We teach them life skills as part of this program, and we teach them financial literacy. So it's a kind of package of 3 types of skills to prepare them for livelihoods. And these are young girls who are in great danger of, child, early and forced marriage. But because when they achieve all these skills and contribute to the family economy, then there's a greater likelihood of them not getting married off at 14 or 12 or whatever. So one of the lessons which we've learned from this program is that it's not enough to give them training. You've got to provide them opportunities for either employment or entrepreneurship. So what we do is link them while they're in training with employers associations where they get the opportunity of starting level jobs, or with financial institutions where they get small seed money to start their own little business. So I think that is a very important thing, that train youth, but also take them to the very end by providing with the opportunities.
Perfect. Thank you. And for you, Dr. Kevin, how can we ensure quality education is offered to all?
Thank you. I'll probably make 3 points here. One, I think teachers have to be at the center of education. And that means providing quality pre-service and in-service teacher training and making sure we're paying wages that are attracting talented individuals into the teaching profession. Secondly, connectivity. I deeply believe, as an EdTech entrepreneur myself, that opportunity sits at the end of an internet connection. Those are opportunities for world-class skilling and certification. On the internet, you actually have access to some of the best professors and institutions around the world, and you can be certified by them. You can also connect to jobs. You can get jobs of working across borders. So I think that governments need to prioritize driving connectivity in order to provide quality education. I know UNICEF here through the GIGA program is also helping to connect schools to the internet. I think it's so important. And then finally, looping back to my original point, I think getting focused on those future skills, almost everyone has talked about entrepreneurial mindsets and skills as a skill for the future. I'll give just one short anecdote as kind of my final remark here. I was in Delhi 6 months ago. The government of Delhi, and full credit to them, has decided to make an entrepreneurial mindset curriculum. Every single student in Delhi gets entrepreneurial training from grade 9 to grade 12, 5 days a week. It's the most popular course. It's not evaluated. And young people go through this, and at the end, they actually get seed money from the government to start companies. I remember I was in one of the classrooms, and I asked this young 16-year-old girl after she presented this amazing sustainable enterprise idea she had. And I asked that ridiculous question that I got to stop asking, that the old person asks to the young person. And I said, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I figured she was going to say, because of course we were in India, she was going to say a civil servant or a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. And she answered it, and I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, well, sir, I don't want to be a job seeker. I want to be a job creator.
Oh, wow.
And that was just stunning to me. And I really do believe that when educational systems get their mind around the power of entrepreneurship and start to teach these skills, we can really change the game for young people.
Thank you. We should all be jobs creators. Mr. Will, what are the opportunities for strengthening the creativity around schools, education, but also at a reasonable cost?
So I want to answer this question by talking about a programme that the Prince's Trust has developed over many years. This is our Achieve programme, which was launched in the UK decades ago and now has the equivalence of a GCSE, which is our qualification for 16-year-olds. And what's so special about Achieve is it's a modular programme that brings an engaging approach to education for young people who are marginalised or at risk of dropping out of the education system. And through Prince's Trust International, we now operate this programme in a number of countries. And where we do that, what we found is that our local providers can adapt the programme so it works for the local context, dialing up one module or another. So maybe doing more on digital skills, more on climate literacy, more on skills for future employment, and so on. But secondly, to Kevin's point, we found that the teachers give us fantastic feedback about the training of trainers, the training of the teachers that takes place to prepare them for the classroom delivery. So I was in Ghana just a couple of weeks ago at a school in a deprived part of Accra with the local providers, Junior Achievement Ghana, and the teachers at the school, and sat through an hour's module. The young people who had been handpicked because they were struggling with their attendance or their behaviour were incredibly engaged in the programme, and the teachers said it was the first time they'd really had an opportunity to focus on their own teaching skills since they first entered the classroom. It needn't be expensive, so long as the schools or the government are willing to use the teachers' time. All you need to do is have that training of trainers and prepare the modules at the start, and then it's eminently scalable. So what we're now seeking to do is to scale that programme. We've launched it here in Rwanda in the last year, working with Akazai Kanozi Access through youth clubs rather than schools, but to the same audience. And we think that's a great way that you can do that. I'm sure there are many other initiatives, but better for me to speak from our own experience.
Thank you. And Madame Keita, how can the Commonwealth countries really work collaboratively to strengthen youth-focused policies for the 21st century jobs?
Thank you, Ingrid. We believe that there's nothing you can do alone, so you have to bring all the stakeholders at the table. So at Youth Connect Africa, we have what we call the 5P model, which is the first P is policy, so all the policy makers. The second P is politics, so working with politicians and decision makers, governments. The third P is popular mobilization, bringing the young people around the youth agenda themselves. The fourth P is pop culture, using artists, singers, influencers to communicate with young people in the language that they understand. And the fifth one is partnership. So using the 5P model, we work all together with all the stakeholders to empower, to educate, and to bring employment/entrepreneurship opportunities to young people. And we call that the EEE agenda. And we believe that is the only way to actually harness the demographic dividend. And so I think countries in the Commonwealth, the 54 member states, have to really tap into that 1.8 billion brains to educate, to empower, and to bring employment opportunities or entrepreneurship. That is the way to really tap into jobs for young people in the 21st century. There's no other way around it. We just have to get it done.
Thank you. And lastly, Mr. Yusuf, tell me, part of the lessons that you're learning in the work that you're doing, what would be inspired new approaches in creating jobs, but also how would your model be scalable to other partners?
Yes, thank you very much. So one of the key learnings that we've had with BAG is that we've come to realize that with EdTech, retention is one of the most painful things that any founder can do, because right now the average retention for EdTech platforms is around 20%. So if you have 1 million signups, you only get 200,000 people who will be using the product on a daily basis. So what we've done is, which is super cool and we're super grateful for this, is we've managed to get one of our angel investors is one of the guys who basically was leading the team that built Candy Crush. So what we've done is we've looked at our platform and we've said, okay, how do we actually integrate gamification to our platform so we can really retain a lot of young people so they can see that learning is fun and it's not really, because there is so many courses out there, like how do you know which ones to take? So what we're doing is that we're integrating gamification on our platform where for every single action that a user takes, they're receiving different rewards. And these rewards can go up to something that is in line with their career development. So for example, it could be partnering with a telco where if you reach a certain level, you're able to receive free 50% off on your monthly airtime so you can access technology better. But also different other fun things that we can get. So for example, you can on your favorite e-grocery store, you're able to get a discount on something that you buy because you're a BAG user. So by doing that, we're really integrating into the life of the learner, and they're feeling like this is something I should be doing on a daily basis, right? And in that process, we are actually achieving what we want to achieve, which is those behaviors that we want to see, that the behavior change that we want to see that is built through habits. So we believe that gamification is really the future of edtechs, and we really want to pioneer that, and in Rwanda specifically, and also scale that all over the country. And maybe on the question around scalability, when we started BAG, it was a fully offline model. Students were coming into our office, but then we realized that we couldn't, fit 50 plus people into our small office. So what we did was, a lot of them said, hey, can I do it when I'm in the village? I don't need to come to your office. And we basically built our platform based on that. And one other small exciting thing is we partnered with Viamo, which is basically an organization that helps different companies to be able to develop mobile solutions so they can access more people. So what we've done is we've recorded a lot of content in Kinyarwanda around career development. So how do you get a job? Where do you find a job? How do you build a CV? What are the key essentials on a CV? All of that in Kinyarwanda that young people all over Rwanda can access. And so far, we've been able to reach over 90,000 unique users in just 6 months. Wow. So that's, it just shows that if you're really building with, with a scaling mindset, there's a lot of good technologies that are already there. It's just how do we partner and get this to a lot of people.
Thank you very much. Quite inspiring. Allow me now to turn to the audience. We could receive some questions. We have some ushers with microphones around the room. Please put your hands up, state your name and where you're coming from, and try and make it a bit brief. Thank you. On the left side. On that side.
Yeah, hello. My name is Usman Toure from the Gambia, ambassador of the University of the Gambia and founder and CEO of Young Ancestors Foundation. So this is not basically a question, but just a quick comment from the discussions. Thank you so much for highlighting the fact that there is something wrong with the education system, especially when it comes to the curriculums and what young people are learning in higher institutions and the kind of problems that awaits us in the society. There is a bit of a disconnection, and especially in this, we have to hit hard on the curriculums. That is exactly what are we studying in the tertiary institutions. I believe that universities and tertiary institutions should be solution centers where the society should reach out for directions where there is need. But what we see today is we ended up having more problems going to school because we ended up graduating and not even having ideas on how we can contribute to solving societal problems. And again, in moments like this, I do recommend that we can also have a moment where young people will not just be in a room to say ideas, but some great initiatives have been talked about in this city of Kigali. How do we go into those spaces and see exactly what they are doing beyond the room here, which will also serve as an inspiration, and most of us can go back to act upon those bases. Another thing is, as well, we need skill set, but mindset is another thing, and that is the most relevant thing. Most of the young people here have already developed amazing projects, but do we really have this space to really make these projects or those initiatives work? So for those individuals that are in higher positions as top entrepreneurs or has developed key or amazing stuff, should really look into inviting these young folks in their own space to not only mentor them, but guide them through on how they can scale up their businesses, but as well as how they can take those ideas to transform other communities as they are doing in their respective countries.
Thank you
so
very much, Usman. That's very great. Youth, you're invited to visit Kigali and learn from many enterprises and companies that you meet. There's another lady on the left one.
Thank you. My name is Eden Gatesi, and I'm from Rwanda. So I had a question from your experience. What have you faced at the job that you felt like this challenge is as a result of a sudden gap in the education system? And what do you think can be integrated into the education system so as to make sure that the current young people who are graduating are not going to face the same challenge when they reach into the job market? Thank you.
Thank you. In the middle, there's a lady.
Once again, my name is Victor. I'm from Cameroon. So I just want to ask to our speakers, are they offering like opportunities to work with youth-led initiatives in rural areas in the different countries? Thank you.
On this side, on the left side.
Hi everyone, I'm Mathanal Kenge from Uganda. I work with EcoBricks, a recycling company. We believe in zero waste communities. My question, sorry, I'll talk the way it is, then we can polish it up. We are talking about being job creators, but at the end of the day, we as the youth, we have a challenge. Much as we want to create our own jobs, sometimes we are irrelevant. And how can you help us to polish us in the right path? Then we go back to the issue where Madame Olivia talked about, where you talked about social media. We are the youth, we are using social media the wrong way. How can we use it in our development? Because at the end of the day, we want to cope up with the trend, but different apps are not user-friendly. Then we as the youth who want to create our own market via social media, but our own hashtags are never promoted because there are other voices on social media that are against our own development. How can we raise our voices through all that storm? Because we the youth, we are the future, we are the vision. But sometimes on social media we are blocked. How can we pass through that barrier? Thank you.
And the last question at the back, a gentleman.
Hello, my name is Chemiman Alexandre. I'm a founder and managing director of Sunwing. We do avocado processing, tools, and cosmetics. We are based in the northern province of Rwanda. And my question goes to all the panelists, but especially to Yusuf. Yusuf, you work with students, and of course, there are so many solutions that can literally solve current challenges that the young people face. But as she has said, the bias on the media and also the information flow is still static. What is your advice on media? Because we also have a very lag behind about the information flow. Why can't we have a TV or a channel? There is France 24, there is BBC, but why is it that Commonwealth doesn't have a TV where the young people can have their programs that facilitate the Commonwealth? Why? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll stop with the questions and come back to the panel. I think we'll start with you, Yusuf. Since you probably be the one who's just recently graduated, so when you went into your workplace, what challenges did you see that made you realize that you're not well equipped when you left school? Also, tap into the question the gentleman just asked. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. Actually, fun fact is that I started BAG when I graduated, when I was in my gap year after high school. So I actually quickly realized that problem, which was, okay, why go to university when a lot of people who are graduates are already crying, if I can say, that they're not being able to get jobs. So why go and spend all that money? So basically, my co-founder and I decided to tackle that problem right away. And ever since, it's always been a big challenge where a lot of people have always asked me, oh, why don't you go to university? But I told them, why do I need to go to university? Eventually I went later. So one of the biggest challenges, I would say from the perspective of BAG, is really the problem-solving skills. And problem-solving is really broad. It can be critical thinking, it could be taking initiative. And it's one of the biggest things that when you look at what does an employer really want from an employee? They want someone who can really think for themselves, and they're not going to need them when there's water everywhere, the office is flooded, and the employee is calling the employer saying, what do we do? It's like, I'm an employer, but I'm like, I don't know what to do as well. So I want you to come up to me with an actual solution to the problem. So, that can go into problem solving. And what we try to do with BAG is we really try to expose people to a lot of different challenges, which is like, these are the things that you are going to face if you are working in a role. These are the things you're going to face. So it's important that you start training yourself on how to actually solve them, so that by the time you're faced with that problem on the job, or even when you're creating a business, you know what are some of the steps to actually take for you to solve that problem. So I would encourage anyone who's here who hasn't registered, go and register on BAG. It's bag.work. And we'd love to hear your feedback. We would love to hear your ideas on how we can make the content better. And really just go and play around with the app. It's free for now, so I'm just giving you that clue.
Keep it free. Thank you. Dr. Kevin, do you get to rural areas? Do you do work in the rural areas and partner with would you partner with some of the young people?
54 countries right now, and obviously a huge portion of our programs are in rural areas. I mentioned the statistic about NEET, so young people not in employment, education, or training. Many of those are in rural areas, so we do a lot of work there. Of course, we're always looking for partners, and we're always working through local partners. No question about that.
Awesome. So you have a partner.
Fantastic.
Will Straw, how do we polish young people?
I was actually going to look at the rural question as well, if you don't mind.
Please do.
We have a program called Enterprise Challenge, which is also targeted at school-age children, helping them to get the entrepreneurial spirit and it's taught through an online simulation game in the classroom, and then local business mentors are brought in to help the young people develop a business idea, which then competes in a national finals. We're going to be demonstrating this tomorrow, to give a little plug, at one of the capacity building sessions tomorrow at 9 o'clock. So any delegates in the room will have an opportunity to test that out. And I think that is a way of helping young people polish their entrepreneurial skills, but it's also something that we've offered in rural communities. So in Kenya, we've targeted it in rural communities. And during the pandemic, there was one individual in particular, a young woman called Ekaleli Susan, who went on to win the Prince's Trust Global Award because she found her family in a really desperate situation when her mother lost her cleaning job and her father lost his job as well. She persuaded them to turn the idea that she developed through our Enterprise Challenge game into a proper business. The family put their savings worth about $50 into the business and set up a local food stall, which went on to employ everybody in the family, including some neighbours, and has doubled the family's income. And we brought her over to London recently for our Prince's Trust Awards, and she's an inspiration to all of us. And I think a great example of how these programmes that you can't always be certain what the impact is having a profound impact. And we're hoping that we'll be able to roll that out in many more countries, including again in Rwanda, where we'll be launching it later this year.
Thank you. Rendezvous tomorrow, 9 a.m. Perfect. Just as we close, Professor Asher, what will be your last word to the audience?
Question about what are the biggest challenges in education going forward. And I think for the young people, one of the big challenges is that we keep talking about transforming education, but we are not ready to do away with the SAT scores and other things, you know. And unless we get rid of those kinds of requirements, there won't be any kind of transformation, because people will still have to do this kind of rote studying to try to get those scores to get into the universities. And the second big challenge for young people is that many countries do not accredit your degrees. For example, in Canada, they say, if you have to have a heart attack, it's better to have it in a taxi, because your taxi driver's probably a heart surgeon, because they don't recognize those degrees in different countries. So I think we need more of accreditation. Young people are very mobile. They go from one country to another, but their qualifications will not be recognized. So I think that's one of the big challenges of education.
Thank you. How about you?
One final comment answering the question about young people wanting to be job creators. And I think it's unfair for us and societies at large to kind of put the onus on young people to become job creators, like you said. There's an entire ecosystem around young people that needs to be activated in order for young people to be entrepreneurs, and that means governments and policy have to take this into account. Not only do you need that entrepreneurial mindset training through education systems, you also need a policy environment that allows you to open companies quickly, that doesn't take 6 months or a year to get the paperwork, and then you need access to finance. And there's lots of ways to do this, but you need an ecosystem around young people to empower them to become job creators. So thank you so much for that question, and just kind of underscoring the fact that young people can't do this on their own, and it's our job, everyone here on the stage and the government, to create the ecosystem so that young people can become job creators.
Thank you. How about you, Mr. Will? What will be your closing remark?
Sorry, on
your closing remarks.
Yeah, well, I think what we've highlighted today is that the skills system right around the Commonwealth, regardless of the country, is not fit for purpose. We're facing a economic crisis with the World Bank and others talking about an era of stagflation. We have the mental health hangover from the pandemic, and of course we're facing a climate crisis as well, which is going to disrupt many, many communities. So it's absolutely essential that we all work together, government, business and civil society, to ensure that the skills that young people gain help them to address some of these challenges. And we know from our research that young people are optimistic about the future. They believe they're going to earn more than their parents. They believe that they can address some of the challenges. And it's incumbent on all of us that those optimism and opportunities are not dashed, and that we make sure that we come together and ensure that the 21st century is a century where everyone can fulfill their true potential.
Thank you very much. Madame Uli?
Yes, before I come to the closing remarks, someone from Uganda, a lady from Uganda has asked me about the social media, the use of social media by young people. I'd like to say that in Africa in general, unfortunately, many of our young people are using the social media wrongly. I mean, social media is supposed to be an opportunity. It's supposed to be a tool that you use to improve whatever you're doing. But some of our young people are really using social media for other things that are not, that are detrimental to them mentally, physically. And so I would say, please, you talked about your hashtags not being promoted, for example. There are millions of young Africans who are doing wonderful things on social media with good hashtags who are being promoted. So learn from those. Don't go on social media to promote yourself, how you live, how many houses you have. Use social media to promote your business. Use social media to improve your skills. There are tons of data out there, free for young people to use. So use it the right way to benefit from it and not the contrary. So for my closing remarks, I would say resilient youth, resilient Commonwealth. So please invest in the youth. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Yes.
And Yusuf, what will be your closing remarks?
Yes, I would like to direct it to employers in the house. So if we have any employers, please ease those job descriptions, at least for entry-level jobs, so more people can get the opportunities. Yes, I definitely do agree with grit and resilience. A job is not going to come and find you. This is one of the biggest problems that we have on the continent, and you're not going to sit at home and watch Netflix and expect an internship or a job to land on your lap. So you have to go and get it. You have to find any of the CEOs around and say, hey, can I intern? Can I volunteer? I need to build my skills. And it's going to be painful, but it's really going to reward in the future.
Thank you. Nothing is ever worth it that is very comfortable. All right, on that note, we thank you very much, dear panelists, and it's been a great pleasure to host you. Have a great evening.
Great, quite fantastic. Thank you once again to our entire panel for their contributions. And of course, they're just going to pose here for a quick photo. And I just want to remind you all to check out the Global Youth Development Index report. And chapter 6 of this report actually has a whole breakdown on education, training, and the future of work, and looking at youth education and employment in the digital economy. So you all can check that out in the Youth Development Index and report for 2020. So you all will see the books all around. Feel free to grab one.
Yes, thank you very much, Darian, and thank you to Ingrid for moderating this session. It was very insightful. And yes, let us go out and seek those job opportunities. Let us create them, and let us not sit around and expect things to come and find us as we watch Netflix. No.
I believe that as well, Martina. Now, everybody, we're going to just flow right away into our next session. But before we do,